that you were what?
One of the 144,000.
What in the world are the 144,000?
According to the society, they are those that are going to go to heaven and be with Jesus.
Okay, Bill, for a quick comment, why is it that 144,000 is so special, and why is it that you as an official, when you heard that this lady down here in the South said that she was one of the 144,000, you could kind of make an offhanded laughing remark?
The Watchtower reads Revelation 7 and 14. There it tells us about 144,000 that are going to be redeemed from the earth. The Watchtower Society doctrine is, it says that these people begin with the ones whom Jesus converted, whom the apostles converted, and they were supposed to all go to heaven in 1914. When this failed, Jehovah's Witnesses continued to grow, and by 1935 there had more than 144,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. Somebody can't go. So the president, being brilliant, figured out that there's something has to be done. Only 144,000 seats in heaven and 145,000 here to fill them. Somebody can't go. So his ruling was that anybody who was a Jehovah's Witness before 1935 goes to heaven. Anybody who became a Jehovah's Witness after 1935 can't go. Now, you get people coming into the Watchtower who are like this individual, who all at once thinks in 1962 that she's one of those up there at the 144,000. Well, instead of burning her off by telling her she can't go, let's say, well, you can go, somebody must have lost his crown. So she thought somebody lost his crown and she took over.
That's what they told us.
Okay, and actually when you declared that, even among the Jehovah's Witnesses, that's not something you want to declare. Why?
No. Because, you know, they'll look at you and think, well, what do you think you have
something
that we
special.
don't have? Yeah, you think you're really something.
Debbie, what did you think when Mama came out and says, hey, folks, I'm one of the 144,000? Can you remember what'd you think?
Didn't like it at all, and I remember when it happened, and I was asleep. I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I remember waking up and hearing her telling my dad that she didn't know how she was going to tell me. And I was crying, and I cried out.
Why were you crying? I mean, she's going to go to heaven and rule with Jesus.
Because it meant that I would never see her again.
Why would you never see her again?
Because I was one of the other sheep, and I had to stay on the earth.
The sheep are the ones that are the Jehovah's Witnesses that rule faithfully, and they're going to inherit the earth, but they won't go to heaven.
That's
so Mom
right,
would be separated from daughter. So you didn't like Mama becoming one of the 144,000?
No, and I didn't care much for Jesus then either when he took her, when thinking that he would take her.
So what did you tell her?
I just told her that I had no choice, that the Lord called me, and that was it. And it was very hard for her, and it was hard for my other daughter.
So talk about sincerity. That has got to be the epitome of sincerity, that you announced to the congregation that would look at you and say, hey, you're something special. The authorities in Brooklyn would say, she's, you know, well, let her go. Yeah. And daughter says, Mama, you're being separated from us eternally. You're going to be to heaven, and we're only going to be the other sheep on earth, okay?
That's right.
And then, even as one of those 144,000, then after you had told everybody, and basically they accepted you, then you started to question, and then what happened?
Then I was called, I would say the terminology would be on the carpet, and they would ask me why.
What did you question? What was the first thing that you questioned?
First thing I never forgot I questioned was I was at a Bible study, and I questioned the fact
that you were teaching. That
I was teaching, and I questioned it. Just the Lord really
right out of the Bible itself.
Right out of the Bible, how Jerusalem would be surrounded in Armageddon time, and then how the plague would fall, and the eyelids that would rot out, and the horses, their eyes would rot out, and so forth. And it was against all nations that went against Jerusalem. Now, the society teaches that Jerusalem pictures Christendom, which is bad. And so then my question was, well, why would God plague those that are going against Christendom in judgment? And then I realized this is really Jerusalem, and this isn't true. And I remember sitting there looking at this dear, sweet girl, Tovi, and wondering, what should I tell her? I knew I was telling her false, and I wouldn't go on. And she was with me. I still don't know how I ever ended that study, and I never conducted another study.
And you never did another study, but you told one of your other girlfriends that also,
a letter to her.
She felt she was one of the 144,000.
Oh, before I was.
And you thought you could trust her with your doubts. You never told any of your family. You never told anybody in the Kingdom Hall. You told that other lady, and you poured out your heart, and you thought she would have an answer to straighten you out. And what did she do?
She gave my letter to another lady who gave it to a circuit servant who sent it right to headquarters. And Ken, my dear son-in-law, was on the committee that they were going to get me out of the organization.
And Ken, what I want to ask is, Mom writes a letter to one of her girlfriends who turns that over to the higher echelons of the Watchtower Society, who wrote you back. What did they say?
You talk about pressure. This was, you know, it's hard to emphasize the feelings that go through you at a time like that. When I was told by Helen, I remember the day explicitly. Joe and I were painting a fence.
Joe's her husband?
Yes, and Helen came out and says, "Ken, I'm in trouble." And at that time, I was 17 or 18, the assistant overseer, what they call elders now, and was on the committee that would have to react to this letter. The letter that came from the society basically said, "This is a troublemaker, get rid of her."
And did they know that it was your mother-in-law?
There was no indication of so. It was written to the congregation overseer.
Which you happened to be?
I happened to be the assistant.
The assistant to the overseer?
Yes.
Okay.
So he drew the body together, but first he called Helen and said that he had gotten a letter. So she says, "Ken, I'm in trouble. What am I going to do?" And I says, "Don't sweat it." Says,
why did you say don't sweat it?
Well, I felt that I was in a position that she didn't have to worry, since I knew she was no more an evil slave than I was.
What's an evil slave?
Evil slave is someone that verbally and openly disagrees with the society. They call them evil slave.
Because you didn't even know that she had written this letter to her friend until the letter came back to you saying, "Hey, she's a troublemaker."
Didn't know.
Okay, so now, meantime, your wife doesn't know all this is going on, right? Did you tell your wife right away?
Did not tell her.
Did you want to tell your wife right away?
This was very hard, because Debbie and her mother are like mother and daughter. You know?
Very, very close.
Very close. Very close, to put it very mildly. And Debbie found out one day as we were in a motel attending Jehovah's Witness assembly, and I was out on some kind of meeting or something.
How did you find out?
I did something that a good servant's wife should not do, and I believe that it was the Lord. I saw this letter laying on his briefcase, and I read it, and it was about my mother. And when he got back to the motel room, I almost had a heart attack right there on the floor, and a divorce and a nervous breakdown all at once. And I said, why did not you tell me? And Ken says, "I didn't know how to tell you, Debbie. I didn't know how to tell you, but now you know." And I said, "Well, what's going to happen to her?" And he says, "I don't know."
Okay, so then what happened? You had to finally bring Mama before the group.
Yes, and it was, I had asked that at this point, knowing the feelings of the circuit servant, and I'll say it out loud, the circuit servant said, "She's got to go." And I would have no part of it, and asked to be taken off the committee that made that decision.
And so you were taken off the committee, and they went ahead and brought you in. What did they ask you when they brought you in?
They asked me if I didn't agree with everything the society said, and I said no. And they wanted to know if I had influenced other people, and I said no. And they accused me of influencing a girl that had come to me visiting. And she asked me what I disagreed with, because by that time I wasn't attending meetings or anything. And I said, "I cannot tell you, because I have nothing to offer you." And then later on they accused me of weakening her faith.
Which you never did.
I never did. And after I was disfellowshipped, about a month later, I got a letter from the, would be an elder, the head of the congregation there, that said this girl wanted me to know that I had not weakened her faith. And the elder that wrote the letter was the one that accused me of this, and that was one of the reasons that I was disfellowshipped.
Okay, when you got the letter that you were disfellowshipped, after 20 years, after declaring yourself to be one of the 144,000 special elect, how did you feel?
I felt the whole world had dropped out the bottom. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. All my life, all I wanted to do was serve God. And I didn't understand. I just didn't understand.
And then what happened?
Well, less than a month later,